Coming off of a fight where Sean Strickland showcased some of the worst decision-making in the history of the sport, where he stood right in front of one of the most dangerous strikers to have ever done it. He looks to rebound. Now in front of him, the killer gorilla, Jared Cannonier. We know Cannonier is extremely dangerous, so we'll see if Sean Strickland sharpens up with the decision-making. Other than that, I'm very high on this card. This card is filled with up-and-coming talent. A lot of fighters whose last names end in OV, a lot of OVs throughout this card, a lot of talented fighters, and I'm excited for today's episode. We're coming off another profitable event. We've been doing it time and time again. This year has been absolutely crazy. You guys can expect a lot of knowledge coming your way for UFC Vegas 66. Let's get into it.
The teller.
It's another day. Left jab, right jab. This is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim? Looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting. If you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go. I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What is up, you guys? UFC Vegas 66. We got a main event that has some major implications for the middleweight division, but I think more importantly, the fight has some major implications on the trajectory of Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland was coming into his last fight with a lot of momentum that all came to a screeching halt when Alex Pereira finished him in the first round. If he loses this fight here, it's going to be a real shame for Tarzan because, like I said, he had some real momentum. He was working his way towards the top. Now, Jared Cannonier, he's already had an opportunity to fight for the belt. And if you ask me, he really let that opportunity slip through the grasp of his fingers. And yes, I do understand that Israel Adesanya is an extremely talented fighter, but Cannonier was very gun-shy in there. And you know, the point I'm making is Sean Strickland needs to get the W here and potentially work his way to a title shot in the very near future if he gets the job done here. Maybe wins another fight and he'll be right up there in the very open middleweight division. Now, this fight card, in my opinion, it's a very fun fight card. I'm loving this Damir Ismagulov versus Arman Tsarukyan co-main event. I talked about the fact there's a lot of fighters with the OV ending in the last name, a lot of OVs. Damir Ismagulov is one of them. He's a very intriguing fighter, 24-1 as a pro, coming off a big-time victory. You got Dober versus Bobby Green. That's a fun fight there. Cheyanne Vlismas taking on Cory McKenna. That's about as fun as it gets. When we're talking about women's mixed martial arts, Cheyanne Vlismas is a absolute savage. Cory McKenna, an up-and-coming young fighter. She's very promising, and that's a fun fight there. Matthews stepping back in the cage after the amazing performance that he just put on. Syed Nurmagomedov taking on Saidyokub, Kakhramonov. That's a big time fight. That's a sleeper fight. Just this card's, it's a good one, man. Sergey Morozov taking on Newson to kick things off. We'll be talking about that here in a second. Real quick, if you guys could though, go catch me on my social media because I've been posting all types of fire posts. If you guys didn't know, every Sunday night I post my main card fight matching, where I'll take all the winners from the main card and I will match them up with who I think they should be fighting with next. You only see 4 here, of course, because I have 2 guys that fought on the main card of this past event, UFC 282, that I think should be fighting each other, Pimblett and Topuria. And, of course, in the recaps of every fight card, which we already have UFC 282, the recap uploaded to the channel, we matchmake the entire card, all the winners. So I talk a little bit more about this in detail, and I would love to get your guys' input. Go check that video out as well. Please subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. And like I said, we're coming off another profitable event where we absolutely slammed Ilia Topuria, 4 units thrown at him, caught it at -145. That was an absolute treat. Jairzinho Rosenstruck cashes at 3 units, -175. And we did have the one lone loss, 3 units on Eric Silva, who was a disappointment, but overall we profit almost 2 units. So, you know, we're grooving. and we're just strolling through the end of 2022. So I appreciate all you guys. Thank you for checking me out on all my social media. I'm also on Twitter at the MMA Teller, and just getting that all out there. We'll now jump into the first fight of the card, where we got Sergey Morozov taking on Journey Newson. Both of these fighters doing a little bit of the same in the last 5 fights as far as win, loss, win, loss, win. Although one of Journey Newsom's victories was overturned via a drug test, but let's understand that he really showcased his boxing skills in that fight. He went out there, he knocked out Domingo Pilarte. Something that I definitely want you guys to take into consideration is if you look at the level of competition between these guys within their last 5 fights, Journey Newson, lost to Ricardo Ramos. I got respect for, Ricardo Ramos. I do have respect for Ramos. I don't have too much respect for the skill set of Domingo Pilarte or his last victory over Fernie Garcia. You guys know I just faded Fernie Garcia in his last fight with an official play. You take a look at the losses. Got knocked out by Randy Costa. That's not a good look either. Randy Costa has really been having a tough time as of recently. And then you take a look at Sergey Morozov, where Sergey, had a victory over Josh Reddinghouse over an M1, but the loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, one of the most highly touted prospects to ever come into the UFC. A lot of people already have him marked down as a future champion. So, whatever. And then he bounces back with a victory over Khalid Taha. And then he loses to Douglas Silva de Andrade. Kind of gassed out in this fight a little bit. Looked like he had a little bit of an energy dump. But I want you guys to understand that Douglas Silva de Andrade is a very much underrated fighter. I've been watching a lot of tape on him. He's faced a couple guys throughout this fight card, so I've been recapping some tape on him. He's been involved in that, and not that I didn't already know. He comes in phenomenal shape. He's very well-rounded, and he's a dangerous opponent. So Sergey fell short there, but he bounced back with the big-time victory over Julian Paiva. Sergey Morozov has shown that he has good wrestling. He's working on his striking. As you see him here hitting pads with Thiago Alves, a man that once fought for the UFC welterweight championship against George St. Pierre, who has still had success in the striking realm, even over the past year or so. Fighting over in BKFC, I believe these days. Thiago Alves is a great striking instructor, and I expect Morozov's overall game to continue to round out over at American Top Team. I'm not expecting him to grow as much as some of the other fighters we're going to be talking about throughout this card. I don't think his potential is quite on the level of some of these other guys we'll be talking about that I'm very excited for. But there is a little bit of an excitement level when I talk about Morozov. He's a good fighter, but a little bit of a step down compared to some of the other studs we'll be talking about. But now he faces Journey Newson. I think this is somewhat of a layup for him, somewhat. Journey Newson does have some good power. We know he has past professional boxing experience. He has decent hands. As of recently, though, he's had a little bit of some performances where he's working the pitter patter. In his fight with Fernie Garcia, was just kind of trying to outpoint him there. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes at Sergey with that same type of style, just trying to outpoint him. And I think if Sergey Morozov stays active and mixes in a couple takedowns and solidifies them, this should be his fight. And that's why I am going to be picking Sergey Morozov to defeat Journey Newson. And let's go take a look at the betting line and see what we're talking about here. Sergey Morozov is going to be the favorite. He is going to be a minus 265 right now on Bovada.lv in the comeback on Journey. The wish he was a journeyman in the UFC Newsom. He would be lucky to be a journeyman. I think it would, maybe I'm being a little harsh on him, but like I said, his victories over lower level opponents, this is a guy that I could see kind of being let go from the organization in the near future. But maybe I'm being hard on him, but time will tell as he fights some guys that are a little bit of a step up like Morozov. At minus 265, I think that's an accurate line. I expected Morozov to be that type of favorite when I saw this fight announced. I wouldn't even be shocked if that line creeps into the minus 300s as we work our way closer to the fight night. And if I have to pick, I'll say that there's more value on a minus 250 to minus 275, that type of range. I'll say there's more value on a Morozov than a Journey Newson. I just don't feel overly confident in taking a guy like Journey, who he seems to be undersized in a lot of his fights, but really when you take a look at the matchup here, he's only 1 inch shorter than Morozov and actually has a half-inch reach advantage, if you want to call that. So nothing crazy going on with the frames here. Both men 33 years old. I just think I like Morozov here. He has more professional experience, and I like the fact that he has the better grappling background compared to a guy in Journey who's just been working on that aspect of his game. I think Morozov will solidify takedown or two do a little bit more work in the clinch and get the job done. We got a matchup of two top 15 flyweight fighters here. David Dvořák taking on Manel Kape. Manel, aka Starboy, coming off two explosive knockout victories over Zhalgas Zhumagulov and Ode Osborne. Remember, he hit Osborne with that nasty flying knee. David Dvořák coming off the loss against Matheus Nicolau. Nicolau is a common opponent of Manel's. Manel just lost to him 3 fights ago in a more closely contested matchup. He lost via split decision. And that was a fight where Manel was lacking a little bit with his activity on the feet. If he would have stepped up the activity, that's a fight that he possibly could have took. And that's something that you want to take note of. If we've ever seen one flaw in his game throughout the last couple of years, it's that at times he's not as active. He kind of hunts for that knockout shot, and if he doesn't land it, is there potential for a guy like David Dvořák to kind of outvolume him? I think there's a possibility of that. You also want to note that David Dvořák does have some submission skills that he brings to the table throughout his career. Maybe not so much in the UFC, although he does have a sub in the UFC, I do believe. But overall, throughout his career, he has pulled off a good amount of subs. Manel has only been submitted one time throughout his career. I believe it might have even been by Horiguchi. So a high-level opponent there. Excuse me if I'm wrong on who subbed him, but I know he's only been subbed one time. So he is shown to be able to defend these submissions of his opponents. So is David Dvořák that much of a threat down there? Manel's not easy to get down to the mat. Like I said, he's very quick, explosive. He uses good footwork. He's very physically strong. He has a little bit of a wrestling background. He has some skills there too. I think that Manel's going to be able to avoid the ground game, and I see this fight taking place a little bit more so on the feet, where I'm going to favor Manel with the power that he possesses, even over the volume of David's. David did not look that good against Matheus. Not to do MMA math, but Manel looked much better in that fight, and he's looked much better since that fight also in his last 2 performances. I'm taking Manel here. Both men 5'5", both men with the 68-inch reach. Both men almost the same age. There's a lot of similarities between these fighters. Almost the same amount of fights as well. David 24 pro fights. On the other hand, Manel with 23 pro fights. This fight makes a world of sense. Right now, David Dvořák ranked 9th in the flyweight division, while the Starboy looks to start to cruise his way towards the top, ranked 12th. This is a big fight for him. Manel's going to be coming in as the favorite, as we all know, and as we would have all expected. It seems like the betting lines have been pretty respectful to him throughout the years. He's a minus 240 here. Now, I'll say this. At minus 240, I think that line's a teeny bit high, and I would favor the value more so on plus 195, just to give you an understanding of what I'm thinking on this line here. But I like Manel. I like him to get the job done, and I like him to really cause a ruckus in this division in the near future. It's just that at minus 240, I'm not completely turning my back on David Dvořák. I understand that he is actually a decent fighter still, even though he's coming off that loss. I know that David Dvořák was a fighter that many people respected, and now he loses to Matheus Nicolau. He had an off night, and we have no respect for him anymore. He's a 2-1 underdog against Manel. I'll say that there's a little bit more value on Manel Kape there, so I will pick him to get the job done. And does he land that knockout shot? Oh, I'm going to say that most likely he doesn't. It would be exciting if he does, but I'm going to say that David probably avoids that, and this goes 3 rounds, but Manel does some major damage and gets the job done. Bryan battle taking on Rinat Fakhretdinov, the gladiator, who is coming off his first UFC victory in his debut over my fellow Greek, Andreas Michailidis. That was a fight where Fakhretdinov was really able to use his wrestling and control that fight. We know that Andreas has had some issues in that department throughout the years. I mean, obviously he doesn't have any type of wrestling base. He's a jiu-jitsu based fighter, and Rinat took advantage of that. I do believe that Bryan battle is much more scrappy there, and Bryan battle will be much harder to take down and control down as well. He's a very deceiving athlete. When you look at his body, I mean, he's not a guy that's chiseled up and Yoel Romero-esque. He's more of just his own type of thing, man. He's a quick dude. He has some long arms, and he moves well. And he's a guy that is getting better fight to fight. So I do expect this to be a way bigger test for Rinat, as you see Rinat with the with the should-be light heavyweight champion of the world, the guy I predicted to be the light heavyweight champion of the world, but we're not going to talk about that. We talked a little bit about that in my recap of UFC 282, but it's great to see him getting in work with a guy like Ankalaev. There's no doubt about that. But I do want you guys to note something. A lot of you are probably looking at Rinat Fakhretdinov and saying, oh, he's 20-2. He's coming out of Russia. He's in his prime. He just came into the UFC and just dominated his first opponent. He's 20-2, but look, if you look at the level of opponent that he's been battling throughout the majority of his career, it's been very low level. As of recently, he's finally stepped it up a little bit. Fighting a guy in Eric Spicely, a former UFC fighter that has some jiu-jitsu skills. He knocked him out, and then Andres Michailidis. But overall, I haven't been overly impressed with the level of competition. Bryan Battle, he's only had 9 pro fights, but he spent time on the Ultimate Fighter show. I mean, he went through the season there. I think that does wonders for fighters' careers. I think that he's really grown as of recently. I think the Tresean Gore victory is underrated. People were harsh on Tresean Gore. He's a good fighter. We saw that in his last fight. You guys have been harsh on Tresean, who's still learning his way through the game, but he's a natural. All right. And then Gilbert Urbina is an underrated fighter as well. Went out there, submitted him. He's been submitting a good amount of fighters throughout his career. He's coming off a big-time knockout victory over Takashi Sato, an experienced fighter. This is going to be a tough fight for Battle, who brings in a 3-inch reach advantage at 77 over the 74-inch reach over Rinat. He brings in that reach advantage. He's an inch taller. This is going to be a tough fight for him, but I'm going to edge Bryan Battle to get the job done. And I promise you guys that's not just because he shows a lot of love to me on IG. Reposted my story yesterday. Unfortunately, I had to take down one of my best memes I made because I actually got reached out to by the little chubby kid who's dressed up as Paddy Pimblett with his dad with the wigs on. I made a funny meme on Instagram, and the kid, it was legitimately his IG. He said, please take that picture down of me and my dad. So I had to take that down, but Battle reshared that. But I promise you guys, this is not a biased pick at all. I do edge Bryan Battle here. Battle will not be just held down and controlled for the majority of this fight. He will be working. I like the activity that Battle possesses. He has underrated power. He's a scrappy dude. And I think that he outvolumes Rinat and just outworks him here. Give me Bryan Battle. And let's go take a look at the betting line. It should be a good betting line. So Bryan Battle, he might not be on, yeah, this one's not going to be on Bovada.lv. Let me pull this up real quick on MMA odds, where you will see Bryan Battle opened as a plus 130 underdog, and right now he's about a minus 110 on average. So a little bit of money coming in on Bryan Battle, as Rinat opened up at a minus 150 and is now a minus 123. The line closing more closer to an even line there. But essentially, Battle is the slight underdog here, I guess, at the moment. Keep an eye on that. I like Bryan Battle to get the job done here. China versus Mexico. Maheshate versus Rafa García. 2 fun fighters to watch. 2 fighters that have came through for me as of recently with official plays. So much love and much respect to both men here. I did have Rafa García over Natan Levy about a year ago to date. That was right around New Year's of last year. And when we had Maheshate in his fight against Steve Garcia, where we had excellent underdog odds. I believe it grabbed them almost at a plus 175 or something or so, whatever the line was. But that was a solid dog hit that we hit 6 months ago. Maheshate looked great on Dana White's Contender Series, where he made a showcase there. Coming into that fight, there was not a lot of tape on him. Not a lot of tape on him at all. So it was kind of hard to gauge what kind of fighter he was coming into that fight against a guy in Achilles who was proven a tough fighter. And Maheshate passed that test with flying colors. He showed that he's a technician on the feet. And then again, now we saw him in his UFC debut, where he showcased that he is a serious striker. He gets the early knockout over Steve Garcia. So forget about all those other early fights that he had in his career that we can't really get our hands on. In the last 2 fights, we've seen that he's the truth, and he's very polished up with his striking. He's very young. We're only going to see him get better and better every time he steps in there. He's only he just turned 23. He's only 23 years old, and he's 6 foot, which is significantly taller than Rafa Garcia here. He has the reach advantage on him. He has a 3.5-inch reach advantage. And you guys are going to see that Rafa Garcia is going to be the favorite here. People like Rafa Garcia. He pushes a high pace for the most part. He was breathing a little heavy in that Natan Levy fight, but he has shown that he has a pretty good gas tank. He's done a lot of work over in Colorado, I believe at Team Elevation and all that. So, he's a workhorse. He's a true workhorse, man. He'll work for those takedowns. He's not always the most technically sound with his takedown attempts, but you could tell he puts a lot of energy into them, and he will rip his opponent down to the mat once in a while. On the feet, he has some power. He's ferocious. He'll mix in the combinations. He's active. He's a good fighter. But I'm going to tell you what, I'm taking the dog here, or I believe him to be the dog. Let's take a look here. Let's see if we can pull this lineup. Bovada LV missing a line or two here on this card, but they will be posted ASAP. Some of them were put together a little bit later or whatnot, or there was some. Let's see here. Maheshate. Here we go. So right now we have pick 'em odds here. Rafa García, or no, excuse me, minus 105 on Maheshate on average right now with the minus 125 comeback in Rafa García. Very, very slight lean towards Rafa Garcia's way. They opened at dead pick'em odds. I'm going to be taking the very, very slight dog Maheshate here. I believe that length advantage, the technical abilities with the striking could pay dividends, and he could land a big shot and potentially knock Rafa García out. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily bank on that. Rafa García is shown to be pretty durable and tough, but I see Maheshate lighting him up, and at the very least taking 2 of the 3 rounds on his fight on Dana White's Contender Series. If you guys remember, that went to a decision, and he went to war with Achilles Estremadura, who was undefeated going into that fight as well. So. I've been decently impressed with Maheshate, but at the same time, I have a lot of respect for what Rafa García brings to the table. Other side note, Rafa García coming off a loss against Jakar Close, which was not his most impressive performance. Before that, victories over Jesse Ronson and Natan Levy. All right, so give me Maheshate to get the job done via decision by being the sharper striker and using that length advantage. One of the fights I'm most anticipating on this card, and one of the fights that's been one of the most intriguing to break down fight tape on is Said Nurmagomedov taking on Saidyokub Kakhramonov. I've actually been back and forth on who I wanted to choose to win this fight here. From a betting perspective, the line has been very close, which I can understand and relate to. But I love when I'm breaking down tape and I start to see certain things that push me one way or another. So to let you guys know, I'm going to cut to the chase a bit here. I was initially on Said Nurmagomedov, a fighter that I believe is extremely talented, throws beautiful kicks, has shown to have nasty submission skills as well if you're slacking. I mean, what he did to Cody Stamen, the way he grabbed that neck and choked him out early, that was, in my opinion, probably his best performance of his career. He's coming off a toughly fought fight over Douglas Silva de Andrade. We talked about him a little bit ago. He's 30 years old. He's in the prime of his career. And in steps Saidyokub Kakhramonov to face off with him. Kakhramonov has very underrated wrestling. If you look him up on YouTube, you can pull up a couple of his wrestling matches from back in the day. He's a fighter that I do believe came in on short notice in his UFC debut, if you guys remember this. Just to show what kind of fighter he is. And that was a fight against Trevin Giles, I believe. And he dug deep and ended up getting a submission victory. I believe it was in the 3rd round. Just showing how deep he could dig. He's a very tough fighter. He's working on his striking. And he's put in some work at Team Oyama. And after that victory, he bounced back with what I believe to be his most impressive victory of his career, and that was the win over Ronnie Lawrence. Ronnie Lawrence is a talented fighter, and what he went out there and did to him was stellar. Just ripping him down to the mat, out-grappling him, just outworking him. And you could see what Saidyokub is about on a full fight camp, and just a fighter that's still developing at 27 years old. He just turned 27. That's why I feel that this kid is a very promising fighter. He will have a 1-inch reach disadvantage, if you want to call it that. They're both 5'8", a lot of similarities here. We're going to give an edge to Said Nurmagomedov as far as a little bit more pro experience and being a little bit older, a little bit more of a mature fighter. I will give the kicking edge to Nurmagomedov as well. He has some very, very beautiful kicks, like I said, and he could score some points in this fight with that. And you see him working on his wrestling here. That's going to be important for him because Saidyokub is going to be pressing and coming forward, and I feel that is the edge that I'm going to give to Saidyokub. I believe that he will have that wrestling edge. At times, we've seen Nurmagomedov kind of get stifled at times for short periods of time, and sometimes long periods of time, right? He dropped that fight against Raoni Barcelos. We've seen him press against the cage. We've seen him taken down at times. We've seen him work on that, though, also. We've seen some guys try to press the takedowns on him, and we see him judo flip them on their heads. The fight that I'm talking about was against Douglas Silva de Andrade, who he threw a beautiful judo trip on him. So he is working on that aspect of his game, but Saidyokub is working on that aspect of his game as well. He's getting better and better. I'm actually going to be taking Saidyokub, Kakhramonov to get the job done here. And like I said, I was initially on Sadyokub Nurmagomedov to get the job done, and I swapped that up. And Kakhramonov, to me, I think that he's going to be very prepared for this fight, and he's going to be a little bit stronger when they lock horns. And I see him getting a takedown or two in this fight. And if you're looking at the chart right now in Saidyokub, I mean, the arrow is going up big time. So you take note of that. But he has a major test in front of him. So we take a look at the betting line here. Nurmagomedov is a -115, about as slight as a favorite as you'll see. The comeback on Kakhramonov at -105. It's a pick'em line here, basically. So yeah, I mean, I see more value on Kakhramonov because that's who I'm picking to get the job done here. I cannot wait to see how this fight plays out. These are two fighters that I've felt bring a lot to the table and have a very bright future in front of them in the next 3 or 4 years. Saidyokub, Kakhramonov to win via decision, solidifying some rounds with the wrestling. Julian Marquez taking on Deron Winn. I don't know how much winning Deron Winn's been doing, but I mean, actually I do. I'm looking at it right here. He's won 1 of his last 4 fights. Losses to Phil Haas in a very entertaining fight. Let me not knock him for that because he showed some extreme toughness. I don't want to make light of that situation. The victory over Antonio Arroyo, he was able to outwork him there and use the wrestling. Losses to Gerald Mearshart and Darren Stewart, and before that, a victory over Eric Spicely. When I look at the losses that Deron Winn has taken throughout his UFC career, the one thing that really stands out to me is the size disadvantage that he has when he steps into the cage. And I mean that from a variety of ways. It's so hard for him to close the distance and land shots. He's 5'6". He's just always had a little bit of a disadvantage, in my opinion. He has an interesting physique, I guess we would say. I mean, he has made it work for him at times, but I really think that he's able to have success just based on the fact that he's extremely technical with his wrestling, and he's a workhorse. He has good cardio, and he has extreme toughness, which he showcased in the Phil Haas fight. In the Phil Haas fight, he was eating so many elbows and just so many power shots to continue to walk forward until he was eventually finished there. But his stock went up to a degree as far as being entertaining for the fans. And obviously he's Daniel Cormier's boy, so he's always going to have a little bit of extra respect behind the scenes as well. Julian Marquez coming off the loss against Gregory Rodriguez. That's one of the first times that we've seen Julian Marquez just really outclassed, but we know that Gregory Rodriguez is a stud. I was just sitting right behind him at the UFC event in Orlando. He's a beast. He's a beast of a man. So Julian Marquez, a fighter that lacks volume on the feet at times, kind of a power striker, kind of always looking for that big shot. We've seen him down on the scorecards a couple of times, and we've seen him come back late in fights. Had one of the most nasty knockout victories that you'll ever witness. I believe that was on Dana White's Contender Series against Phil Haas, right? When Phil Haas was gassed out and then he hit him with that kick right there. So Julian Marquez has that big time power, but I think that Deron Winn will be pushing the pace early in this fight. But the reason why I'm going to be taking Julian Marquez to get the job done here is if Deron Winn is rushing those takedowns and forcing them, Julian Marquez will grab his head and his neck and he'll maneuver him around and he'll use that size and that weight advantage. I do expect him to be the heavier fighter when they lock in there the day of the fight. Julian Marquez obviously is going to be very motivated here coming off that loss. He has a 2-inch reach advantage, which isn't as much as you would think, being as taller as he is than Deron Winn. But still, the overall size is going to lead me to pick Julian Marquez to get the job done here. I don't think he gets the sub, but there's a possibility that we see a very tired Deron Winn who was pushing the pace with the takedowns and not having as much success as he wanted to. And maybe we see Marquez kind of hurt him or trap him into a choke, some type of guillotine or some type of choke where he can get on top of him and really settle his weight in on Deron Winn and tap him out there. In fact, that's what I'll say. I'll say a late submission victory for Julian Marquez. Let's pull up the betting line here and see what we're talking about in regards to betting on this fight. Julian Marquez is a -170 with the comeback on Deron Winn at +140. I'm in agreement with that line as well. I don't think I see anything here that's ridiculous. Pretty accurate And when you're looking at that minus 170, I'm telling you guys right now, it has a lot to do with the physique of Deron Winn. Deron Winn is a guy that could really have success against guys that are not up to par with their wrestling and grappling, more striking base fighters that he could take advantage of. And that's not really who Julian Marquez is. Julian Marquez is a power puncher, a power striker that has some nasty submission skills and knows how to throw his weight around down in the mat as well. So give me Julian Marquez to get the job done via a late submission over a gasted Deron Winn. And more value on the minus 170 line if I had to pick away there. Jake Matthews taking on Matthew Semelsberger. Jake Matthews coming off the biggest victory of his pro career. The knockout victory that he had over Andre Fiallo was big time. And yeah, we've been seeing Andre face some adversity as of recently, right? He's coming off another tough loss, but when Jake Matthews fought him, his stock was much higher than it is at the current moment. And Jake Matthews just looked ridiculously on point in that fight. It looked like he was hitting on all cylinders. And then when you take into consideration that he's 28 years old and that he has so much experience fighting in the octagon already, we've been waiting for him to blossom throughout his entire UFC career. I mean, the UFC, they groomed him the right way, so it was almost like it was expected and almost like he had to eventually showcase some of these types of fights like he did in his last fight. But it's easier said than done, although we say we expect this or whatnot. I mean, it's not easy to go out there and do what he did, especially against a guy like Andre. But I do expect that Jake Matthews is going to branch off of the momentum from that fight. He's going to be bringing it right into this fight. Matthew Semelsberger, on the other hand, is coming off a fight where he was exposed to an extent against Alex Morono, got beat up in that fight. Now we know that Alex Morono is talented. We saw what he was just doing until he got knocked out. I mean, Alex Morono can push a pace on you with his striking and really outpoint you. He's very accurate. But I'm a little bit questionable about the cardio of Matthew Semelsberger these days. I thought he slowed down a little bit early in that fight. I know that he is kind of an explosive fighter. He has some power. He possesses some power in his boxing, and I feel that at times that he does fall in love with that a little bit too much. We will take a quick look. Before the loss, I mean, he had a victory over AJ Fletcher, and he had that knockout over Martin Sano. Martin Sano was a guy that should have never touched the canvas in the UFC. One of Nick and Nate Diaz's boys, and they got him in there. So, then the knockout over Jason Witt, another fighter that we've seen knocked out a couple times. So it's not like it's amazing that Semelsberger pulled that off. Jake Matthews will be a lot harder to touch, a lot harder to hit. Jake Matthews will have better cardio. He's the more well-rounded fighter, and I'm definitely leaning Jake Matthews to get the job done here, the Celtic Kid. He will have a 3-inch reach disadvantage, and he'll be a little bit shorter. Matthew Semelsberger is a true athlete, former college football player. I believe he played safety or whatnot, and he can lay the leather there. But it's not going to be easy for me to pick Matthew Semelsberger in this spot. Give me Jake Matthews to get the job done, especially after the performance that he just put on in his last fight. And I'm hoping we see a lot more of that because that was exciting to watch. It was very exciting. Let's find this betting line here. Jake Matthews is a minus 260, a big-time favorite over Matthew Semelsberger. That line does not surprise me. I know it's high, and I know Semelsberger's a dangerous man, but that line does not surprise me in the slightest based off the two performances both these men just had not too long ago. I would say there's more value in a minus 260 line on Jake Matthews. You either throw it in a parlay or you slam it straight. If you want to get crazy, maybe you and I finish if you can get a crazy line on it, but be careful because Semelsberger has shown to be very tough. He's eaten a lot of shots in the feet throughout his time, and he's shown that he's tough. So I would see Matthews maybe hurting him, but maybe not finishing him there, and more of a decision type of victory for Jake Matthews. Cheyanne Vlismas, formerly known as Cheyanne Bays, taking on Cory McKenna. Two young and up-and-coming fighters in the strawweight division. A little surprised to see the UFC clash these two women right now instead of kind of branching them their own ways. Some people would believe that both these fighters have a lot of promise, but why not? Why not throw these two fighters into the fire and see who comes out and can really start to make a name for themselves? Although, I think the loser still has a lot of potential down the line. Both them young. Cheyanne 27, Cory 23. Cheyanne Vlismas, you guys all know about the whole story with her and JP Bays. A lot of stuff came out. I can't even fathom how I ended up knowing so much about that situation based on the way it happened. You know, I ended up making a funny video. She asked me to take it down. Next thing you know, I'm getting messages from JP, and I don't know, just it's kind of funny how I basically found out a lot of details and know all about that situation. But the world's a funny place. You know, I don't really care to get in people's personal business, but somehow that happens, and it's kind of weird when I think about it. But the whole world was all in their personal business. Luckily enough for Cheyanne, I think that's all going to start to slow down and die down. She's still young, and whether you guys realize it or not, she's a hitter in the division. She has some serious power. She's been going out there, you know, starching girls like Gloria DePaula. Remember, she gave her that nasty soccer head kick, put her out. You know, the Ruiz fight is a fight I want to talk a little bit more about here in a second. That was the lone loss that she's had since working with the UFC. You know, in fact, that is it's one of two times that she's tasted defeat. So, here's the problem, right? In that Monasterat Ruiz fight, she was constantly taken down with this head and arm throw, and then she was held into this type of like scarf position or whatnot, whatever you want to call it, kind of held in a side control position and a headlock. And when she was caught there, she really had a tough time getting out of it. She spent a lot of time down in the mat just losing rounds, and then when the next round started off, she was right back in that same position. Cory McKenna is a fighter that has shown that she can out-grapple her opponent if her opponent is not up to par there. If you guys remember, you know, on Dana White's Contender Series, she was able to take Vanessa Demopoulos down at will, and we know Demopoulos has some serious Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Cory McKenna controlled her down on the mat. That was a big victory for her. It looks even better now. The victory over Kay Hansen, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She had the loss over Elise Reed. That was her little black eye, just like Vlismas has, but she bounced back with a Von Flue submission over Miranda Granger. So I think Cory McKenna's stock is actually pretty high right now at only 23 years old. You know, I say it all the time. I really do expect her to look better and better every time she steps in there, for sure. I don't like the fact that she's going to have a 4.5 inch reach disadvantage on the feet. I do not like that, even though they're both 5'3". Cory McKenna a little bit more stout, I guess you would say. And I think that can give her some real problems. If Vlismas can use her footwork, stay on the outside, and work her nasty striking, and as they start to get a little bit more sweaty and tired, maybe then she starts to engage even more so, and she could slide out of those takedown attempts or that clinch. She could slide out of that clinch and still stay at bay and score some points. And we do got to briefly talk about the loss that McKenna took against Elise Reed, where Elise Reed did some damage to her on the feet as well and tagged her up a bit. So we know that Vlismas is a better striker than Elise Reed, and she's really on the rise. And I'm going to be taking Cheyanne Vlismas. You know, it's funny because in all reality, Cheyanne Vlismas slid into my DMs. That's an absolute fact. Cheyanne Vlismas slid into my DMs. Now, maybe it wasn't what you would want it, what the message to say, but at the same time, she shot me the DM first. So I will be taking Cheyanne. I think she has a lot of promise in the game, a lot of room for growth, and we'll see how far she could push it. As of now, she's not even in the top 15. Either of these women are not in the top 15, but they're on the fringe, and a victory this upcoming Saturday, they're well on their way to being in the top 15 and causing a ruckus in the division. Give me Cheyanne Vlismas to bloody up McKenna on the feet, land some significant shots, and get the unanimous decision. Cody Brundage taking on Michał Oleksiejczuk, who is going to be fighting in the middleweight division here for his second fight in a row. Performed well against Sam Alvey, got the job done. He obviously was a major favorite going into that fight. You know, the UFC was good with him as far as giving him an opportunity to come down and wait and fight a guy like Alvey. Now he gets Cody Brundage. Cody Brundage coming off a big-time victory over Tresean Gore. We all know the word that came out after the fact. Supposedly Tresean Gore had a horrible weight cut, so he was a little bit compromised. And you kind of believe it if you see the way he just collapsed so easily. But at the same time, let's not just completely disrespect Cody Brundage. Let's give him some credit too. He obviously carries some power, and Cody Brundage is a fighter that has a wrestling base first and foremost. That's what he came into the MMA side of things and really used to get the job done. Right, he used his wrestling. I was not crazy about the way he looked against William Knight. He forced that takedown early, got on top of him, but then William Knight literally crawled out the back and ended up smashing Cody Brundage and getting the finish there. That was a really bad look for Brundage at the time. But since then, he's been kind of getting things together. Had a victory over Joseph Kropshot. Then the loss against Nick Maximov. That fight does not look that good right now. Maximov's stock is well down, but then he gets 2 victories in a row. Dalcha, we know what Dalcha Lingambula is about. Let's talk about low stock, another loss for him. But the victory over Tresean Gore was his premier victory. Michał Oleksiejczuk is just... he's the better fighter here. Let me cut to the chase. I really believe he's the better fighter. The fact that he's cut down to the middleweight division, I think it was an amazing move. He was very undersized at the light heavyweight division. He's so active. He pushes a great pace, has good cardio. He's extremely technical with his boxing, as you see him shadow boxing here. Throws beautiful body shots. He's a southpaw. He gives the guys a lot of problems there. And he's looking good to me, and I think he's going to get the job done here. I do not believe that Cody's going to be able to use his wrestling enough to control this fight down there and score rounds, score points, win rounds. I just don't see it. Oleksiejczuk will get up to his feet if he's even taken down. He'll work his way up. He'll stuff a lot of takedowns, and then he'll get up or he'll stuff it and immediately start to press the action on Brundage with his boxing, and I don't think Brundage is going to like it. Give me Michał Oleksiejczuk to get the job done here. Maybe a late TKO, maybe a knockout here, maybe an early knockout, but maybe I'll say a finish for Michał Oleksiejczuk. I'll say he gets a finish in this fight. Let's take a look at the betting line here. Michał Oleksiejczuk, a -285. That's a big-time favorite coming into a fight with a guy that stock is decently high after the victory he just had. I'm going to kind of say that line is more towards the high side, and I'll actually say that I'm going to say there's more value on a +215 line on Brundage. That line should probably be more around a +185 if you ask me. I think Oleksiejczuk should be down under that 250, 245 line. So a little high, but people are high on Michał, so let's see how he looks. I say he gets a late finish. Drew Dober taking on Bobby Green. 2 fighters with very much respected names in the game. They've been around the block for quite some time. 2 talented strikers. I think they each do it their own way. Very different. Bobby Green, more of a street fight, boxing type of stance. Hands low, throwing from the hip, talking crap to you. Drew Dober, a very technical Muay Thai fighter. We know that he's won some Muay Thai championships and whatnot early in his career. He's a dangerous man. He now has 36 pro fights. He's only he is 34 years old, but I say only because he's been around in the UFC for a long time and has a world of experience fighting in the octagon. He's coming off 2 victories where he took out Rafael Alves and Terrence McKinney, 2 fighters that I hold in high regard. Those are big victories. Both men have lost to Islam Makhachev within their last 5 fights. Of course, that was Bobby Green's last fight where he took it on short notice, and you pretty much chalk that up to it is what it is. And before that, 2 victories in a row: the victory over Nasrat Hakparas, the victory over Ali Quinta, the loss to Rafael Fiziev, but actually throwing down, going toe-to-toe with Fiziev, having some success. That was, in some people's eyes, a successful fight. So Bobby Green's been doing his thing. He was on the Joe Rogan Experience. He's really... Look at his big old mug in your face. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's so big, but he's an awesome dude. We saw him on their Joe Rogan Experience. He is getting up there in age, though. A little bit older than Dober. Both these guys are creeping up towards the end of the road, if you want to be honest about it. And but the time is now, and this is a good fight. And I see these guys throwing down on the feet. And with Bobby Green dropping his hands at times and just kind of being out of position at times, the way he's kind of wild switching stances, I think that there will be a possibility for Dober to land a flush kick to the upper body, man. Maybe a nasty body kick, or maybe even a head kick. Dober throws those ruthlessly, and I could see him landing something like that. But even overall, I'll take the technician of Drew Dober over Bobby Green. I'm going to favor the more technical and by the book type of striker here, and Drew Dober, if you will. I'm going to say he wins a decision. I'm going to say he outpoints Bobby Green. And let's go take a look at the betting line. Drew Dober is going to be a -160 favorite over Bobby Green. It's funny how people turn their back on Bobby Green, right? He comes off that loss where he took on short notice against the current champion. People aren't really holding him in as high regard as they were maybe just a little bit ago. People were actually, if you remember on IG and whatnot, people were talking about some big things to come for Bobby. So I'm going to take Drew Dober here to get the job done, and I'm going to say that the line is very accurate. If I had to pick a line here, I would rather take the -160 line on Dober than cough up the the money to put on a dog at plus 130 in Bobby Green, I still would say I'd feel more comfortable with Dober. So I guess that means that the value is on the minus 160 line, right? Bruce Leroy taking on Juicy J. I refuse to refer to these guys as their government names here. The nicknames are just too dope. Bruce Leroy, that's who he is. And Juicy J, shout out to one of the better rappers to have ever done it as well. But Julian Erosa, a fighter that has been consistently overlooked throughout the years. He's a fighter that has came in as an underdog very many times and has shown up. You take a look at his resume throughout here. I mean, you're seeing him as an underdog very, very often, settling in as an underdog. I mean, not in this fight here. We'll get to that line in a second, but an underdog at plus 175 against Hakeem Dawodu. I mean, even dating way back in the day, plus 150 against Jourdain, against Sang-Won Choi, plus 115. I mean, just not a lot of respect on his name. Plus 390 against Sean Woodson. And he did win that fight. All right. So he won that fight and he was a major underdog, closed around almost plus 400. All right. So the point I'm making is that for whatever reason, coming off the Ultimate Fighter way back in the day, 2011 or 2010, whatever it was, he showed that he was a solid athlete. He was putting in the time in the game, learning all the tricks and trades of mixed martial arts. He has some nasty submission skills, some really nasty sub skills. You take a look at some of his work over the years. I mean, the Darce choke over Charles Jourdain. Nasty flying knee victory over Nate Landwehr, but he has also pulled off some other subs throughout his career. He's a fighter that has 37 pro fights under his belt. He's very, very experienced, and so is Bruce Leroy. And the thing I want to say about Bruce Leroy is that he's had an above average surge late in his career. You take a look at his age right now. He is 34 and a half years old, and I would say that he's really had a lot of his best success in the cage within the last couple of years. As you take a look at the winning streak he was on, victories over Chase Hooper, Austin Springer, Kevin Kroom, Sang-Woo Choi. That was definitely his biggest victory there. Really, when you take a look at some of these other guys, you notice that it's not the best level of competition, but you still got to give credit for Leroy for sharpening things out late in his career and looking as good as he has. But how do we see this fight taking place? Both men rangy, both men right around that 74-inch reach. We do have a 1-inch reach advantage for Juicy J. Juicy J 6'1". He's going to have that length advantage in the legs a little bit. I like the fact that Juicy J is constantly switching stances. He's very tricky, a little bit of a Dominic Cruz type feel to him when he's out there. Like I said, throwing from the hip. With his boxing, and he can score some points on some guys. I mean, to go out there and do what he just did to Hakeem Dawodu, that shows the level he's on. Hakeem is a very respected fighter. You would hope that he took some of that respect from Hakeem and bring it into this fight here, which it does seem to be the case when you take a look at the betting line. And the victory over Charles Jourdain stands out as well. But let's take a look at this betting line because I am angling Julian Erosa to just mix things up like he always does, to be a step ahead down on the mat as well. And Julian Erosa is a minus 185 favorite. So people finally giving him some respect. And that line is trajecting up and up. So people actually putting money on Erosa from what I've seen thus far. I think the fact that when you really take a look into Bruce Leroy's success over the last couple of years, although it looked good at the time, if you weren't really putting your glasses on, when you take a look at a lot of the fighters that he's beaten, it's kind of it takes a little bit of zest out of it, right? Chase Hooper, Austin Springer, Kevin Kroom, Sang-Woo Choi. Okay, so yeah, Julian Erosa going in there with higher level opponents and getting the job done in a variety of ways. Give me Juicy J to win in a very exciting fight, but Caceres can take a shot. So I'm going to say that Caceres does survive. Just survived in there with Sadiq Yusuf, and I think he does survive. I think Julian Erosa wins a unanimous decision with the betting line at minus 185, like we said. So where do I see more value when we take a look at this betting line? That's a little tricky, right? Because that line is kind of high for my liking. Oh, I got to pick one way or another here. I'm going to say that there's, I guess, more value on the minus 185 line because I would put my money on that line more so than the Caceres. I think that Juicy J is going to show up here. He's going to show up and show out. Amir Albalzi taking on Alessandro Costa. Some of you guys probably remember Costa from his fight on Dana White's Contender Series 3 months ago where he took out Andres Luna Martinetti. Since that fight, he has another victory where he went out there and he knocked out Carlos Gomez, which is good to see. You want to see his striking come around some more so. We know he has some really solid jiu-jitsu skills as well. Also worth noting that he did win via split decision on Dana White's Contender Series fight. And now he faces Amir Albalzi, a guy that is already very established in the UFC. He hasn't been the most active, but for the most part, he's went out there and just completely showed up his opponent. Did go to a decision with Zhalgas Zhumagulov, but other than that, submitting Francis Figueiredo in their last fight 2 months ago, submitting Malcolm Gordon in his UFC debut, where he pulled off an actual triangle choke off his back, a leg triangle choke, which hardly ever happens in MMA, and at least in the UFC especially. You don't see that as much. It's a very rare submission, unfortunately, because it's pretty much my favorite, but it's just... if you're technically sound, like the fighter should be in the UFC, it's a submission that's a little bit easier to avoid if you're disciplined. Amir Albalzi has been working on his striking. He's decently technical there as well. He has some good boxing, and in my opinion, he's one of the dark horses in the division. I think a lot of people are anticipating him making a run towards the top. So. This is going to be a tough fight for Alessandro to make his debut on. I know he has a lot of momentum coming in, but I think this is a tough spot for him, and the betting line is going to reflect that. We'll talk about that in a second. Alessandro has some very very solid grappling skills, but the problem is Albalzi is very good down there as well, and I think that he can kind of nullify Costa there. And on the feet, I think Amir Albalzi will get the edge. Alessandro Costa, although he doesn't have a ridiculous amount of submissions throughout his career, definitely has some, but not a ridiculous amount. If you look at some of the finishes that he's had, even through his ground and pound and whatnot, he's using his jiu-jitsu to put himself in a good position to end the fights there. So I think Albalzi avoids all that, and I think Albalzi throws a nice jab and a nice left hook, and I could see him outboxing Costa a little bit here. I like the experience that he has already in the octagon, the comfortability, and I'm going to take him here. He's an inch taller, has a 1 inch reach advantage. Nothing crazy there, but I mean, those are little things that add on to what I already said, and it really points me towards Amir Albalzi's direction. And we'll take a look at the betting line. Amir Albalzi is a minus 500 favorite right now over Alessandro Costa. That's a major favorite. That's a giant line in the flyweight division. That's a big deal, especially with the guy that's been going out there winning time and time and again in Alessandro. So people are really putting some respect on Amir's name. I'm not crazy about the minus 500 line, if I'm being honest with you. I'll take more value on a plus 340 line on Costa, being that I've seen him go in there and showcase some real dangerous skills, at times. Like I said, I do think that Albalzi will avoid those, and he's a bad stylistic matchup, but you can't tell me that minus 500 line is looking that appetizing against a guy in Costa that's been getting his hand raised. I'll say more value on Costa, but I expect Amir to go in there and be the better fighter. Check this one out. Arman Tsarukyan taking on Damir Ismagulov, two of the nastiest fighters in the game, two of the most technically sound fighters in the game, should I say. Arman Tsarukyan coming off a loss against Mateusz Gamrot in a fight that I had him winning. A lot of people thought he should have got the nod, but nevertheless, a very closely contested matchup, a 5-round war. Arman, for a fact, I know he is as motivated as ever. There's just no question. I know that the disdain that he tasted when he lost that fight, that had to have lit in a fire under him, where he's working out more than ever. And this is a guy that we're talking about that already has an insane work ethic. You see it on his physique. The guy is absolutely chiseled. Anything you look up on the guy is just an absolute grinder, a stud. His striking is nasty. His kick game is nasty. He throws some nasty head kicks at you, has a nice jab. His boxing's good. This is a kid that we've seen come into the UFC, fighting the current champ right now. Took that fight on short notice, and he was about 22 years old, and gave him one of his toughest tests. I mean, Arman Tsarukyan, don't let that last closely fought loss make you forget that he is one of the most dangerous and complete fighters in the game, and he is only 26 years old, so the room for growth is still there. That's a dangerous man. I think that Arman Tsarukyan will be the slightly better striker, a little bit more explosive, and that being said, Damir Ismagulov is a very technical striker as well. He's very disciplined. He's underrated there. We saw him it's kind of interesting, right? We just seen Damir Ismagulov go to war with Guram Katelezi, a fight that people thought could have went his way as well. Guram's the other way, could have went the other way as well. And meanwhile, Guram also fought a very closely contested matchup against Mateusz Gamrot. So we got like a little bit of some fight math, mixing up between those 4 fighters, and they're all fighters that I'm very high on, and I think that are 4 of the best fighters that are crawling out under the rock in the lightweight division. If Arman Tsarukyan had some issues in that fight against Mateusz Gamrot, it was that Mateusz was constantly leeching on him with the wrestling and holding on to him and kind of stealing some rounds. Damir Ismagulov just essentially did that to Guram and their fight there. So I think that Damir Ismagulov actually has some real potential to use his wrestling and use his clinch to kind of wear on Arman. I think Arman's going to want to work in space a little bit more so. And I think that Arman Tsarukyan will be sharper than ever as far as getting the body of Damir off of him where he could work in space based on the matchup that he just lost. And going back to the drawing board, that fight was almost 5 months ago. Perfect amount of time to grow in that department. And I'm taking Arman Tsarukyan, the younger and more promising fighter as far as pushing towards the top. And I say that while still having a great deal of respect for Damir Ismagulov. He's one of the more intriguing fighters that I've seen come into the game. So I think that there's legit potential for an upset here if he uses that wrestling, and Arman didn't sharpen things up there like I hope he did. But we'll take a look at the betting line and I'll tell you where I see the value. Arman Tsarukyan is going to be a minus 179 favorite against Damir Ismagulov, who's a plus 145. I'm going to say that I think there's a little bit more value in that plus 145 line on Damir Ismagulov. He's a constant professional. If there's a guy that can come in here and pull off the upset, even against a guy that's as talented as Arman Tsarukyan, it's another fighter that's extremely talented like Damir Ismagulov. I'll take more value on Damir, but Arman Tsarukyan is the better fighter, and I'm going to pick him to get the job done by using his striking. You guys, I have good news for those of you guys that are looking to sign up for a new sports book. I'm keeping the offer of 2 fight cards. As far as my package for official plays, I'm giving you 2 fight cards, not just one like I normally do. You could use them for any events you want, any 2 events. You get all of my official plays. If you sign up, reach out to me. I got my email, my IG, my Twitter below. I'll send you my referral link. You just sign up through bovada.lv, get yourself going, and I will get credit for a referral. And I could use any website that I want in regards to this referral system, but I choose bovada.lv because it's my sports book. It's my favorite sports book. It's the most convenient, pleasant to look at. Everything's set up nice, and the payouts are very easy. Reach out to me if you're interested. And that will take us to the main event. Jared Cannonier taking on Sean Strickland. We briefly brushed upon the fact that Sean Strickland has a lot riding on this matchup, coming off the loss to Alex Pereira. Before that, let's just take a quick look at the work that he was doing. He's 25-4 as a pro. Coming into that fight, he was on a 1. That's a grappling match, so don't worry about that. He was on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-fight winning streak. His lone losses in the octagon were against Kamaru Usman and Zaleski dos Santos, 2 talented fighters. But he did make a very, very big mental mistake and walking forward on a guy like Alex Pereira with your hands down. And also made a big mistake in the sheer fact that he wasn't going into that fight pressing the grappling immediately and testing what Pereira was about there. I think that was very important. I think he would have had more success with the striking later on in the fight, if any. Early on, I think it was very, very dangerous for him to charge Pereira like that. Obviously, it didn't pay off. So, Jared Cannonier has some serious power himself. He's coming off a disappointing title shot where he really was not active at all. He's 8-6 in the UFC. He's coming off that loss against Adesanya, but before that had the finish over Brunson, a victory over Kelvin Gastelum, and then before that the loss to Robert Whittaker. He is a talented fighter. He's a fighter that used to fight up at the light heavyweight division. He worked his way down to the middleweight division. He has a great frame. He's chiseled up. He's well-rounded. I think with him, at times, it's a little bit of the mental side of things that worries me. And the same can be said about Sean Strickland. Both these guys haven't shown to be the most crafty in there, in my opinion, with their game plans and what they were doing in there. So I kind of question both these men. But from a skill standpoint, as far as throwing down, these guys are very talented. And Sean Strickland is a fighter. Let's not forget, though, before that loss, he's a fighter that has broken records with the amount of volume that he puts on with his striking on the feet. So he's a very active fighter. We've seen Jared Cannonier hesitant a little bit as of recently, but he does have some power. So I'm going to say that this fight kind of goes like this. If Jared Cannonier doesn't land a fight-impacting shot where he drops Sean or knocks him out, if one of those two things don't happen, I'm going to say that Sean Strickland wins a decision here and outpoints Jared Cannonier. Cannonier is extremely tough. I don't see Sean Strickland stopping him. I see Strickland just pushing the pace and trying to just make it a fun fight, talking crap and whatnot. But I'm going to say he avoids that big shot and he does get the decision. I'm going to pick Sean Strickland. But again, those are the two ways I see this fight going down. And Sean Strickland, only 31 years old, so he is in a position here where he could really get the vehicle, whatever you want to call it, the bike, the vehicle, the career back on the tracks, the train, whatever you want to call it. He is at a good point if he could do that. Jared Cannonier, he's still creeping up on 39 years old. So, I mean, I know he looks great and all, but he had a title shot and he didn't throw anything out there at Israel Adesanya. It was a boring fight, and maybe I'm putting him under the magnifying glass or putting him under the fire a little bit more so because of the way he fought in that fight. I felt that if he would have charged Izzy and at least made it somewhat of a war, he might have got knocked out, but he also may have got a knockout. As we've seen, Izzy is susceptible to being hurt there. He's not invincible. Give me Sean Strickland here, and let's take a look at this betting line. I got Sean Strickland winning a decision here by outpointing Cannonier with the volume and the activity. He's a -120 with the comeback on Cannonier at even odds. I'll say there's more value in a Sean Strickland, even coming off that knockout loss. It's basically, in my opinion, if he doesn't get hurt badly, he wins the fight, and I'll bet against that. At pick'em odds, I'll bet against the guy avoiding that big shot compared to betting on the other fighter landing that shot, waiting for that big shot to be landed. Give me Sean Strickland, and I see more value on the -120, obviously, as it is a pick'em. This will be a good one. Let's see how it plays out. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC Vegas 66. I like this fight card. I really do. And hopefully you guys are as excited for it as I am. And we'll have our spots to make money. We will capitalize. If you're interested, you could always shoot me a message to ask me my pricing on my packages if you want. And we've been absolutely killing it for the last 2 years. It's been real pleasant to watch the profits and the units continue to come in. So if you want to join, reach out to me. I got my email below, Instagram, Twitter. You can message me on any of that. We got to leave you guys with some closing thoughts, as we always do. Something that came to mind, I forgot what it was. I saw something recently that was kind of nasty or whatever, kind of unfortunate. And, I realized a lot of the people that listen to my show, I'm sure a lot of you guys train MMA, and at least you've trained for a little bit. Some of you guys probably train a lot of it. And, I think it's worth noting that you guys got to be careful when, especially for you young guys out there that are still partying, going out to the club scene, the bar scene and all that. Be careful because, I know that feeling where you kind of feel a little bit invincible because mixed martial arts, or a good amount of mixed martial arts, and you pretty much feel confident that there's a high percentage chance that if you get an altercation with someone there, some doofus, that you're going to start wreaking havoc and wrecking dudes up, especially if you've done it time and time again and you kind of know how it usually goes for the most part. Just be careful for all you guys that are listening that should be confident in your skills and all that. Be careful because you never know who you're bumping into when you're out and about. I've seen things from that aspect a lot too. You never know what demon or what ugly individual is right next to you, and maybe they have a knife, maybe they have a gun. It does happen. It definitely does happen. Or again, you never know who they're all with, and next thing you know, you're doing that, and someone's blindsiding you, and you're getting beat down. Just be careful out there. I hope all you guys realize, even if if there's a bum fighter, if he has a knife or some type of weapon, he could still cause quick damage to you. So, I don't know. And maybe it all ain't worth it. The older I've gotten, I've kind of looked at life in a different lens, and I like to kind of spread that message a little bit more. So just be careful out there, because when you see these unfortunate events happen, it's so sad because 99.99% of the time they're so easily avoidable. So when you see that clown acting a fool, obviously you always got to stand your ground, and obviously you don't want to be disrespected. You want to keep the level of respect you have for yourself up. But at the same time, if you see a fool that you don't really need to mess with and you could easily avoid it, just let it slide. And I don't know. You don't want to get charged with killing somebody also. If you knock them out and they crack the back of their head open, that's another thing that happens way more than people realize. I know someone that died like that at a young age, getting knocked out by a bouncer, fell back, cracked his skull, dead. Just like that. It's crazy. You know, 1 second they're lively, they're running around, next second they're gone off just a hit. And you know, you don't want to be in that situation either. So unless you have to be. But that'd be my message here. And I hope you guys are all having a great December as we ease into the holiday season. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. If you celebrate something else, I wish you a happy holiday for that stuff too. But Merry Christmas to everyone that celebrates Christmas out there. I got my tree up, and I love the month of December. Can't wait for Christmas Eve and Christmas, and then we ease our way into New Year's. And it's a great time of year, and I hope you guys are all having a blessed December. And I guess that's where I'll leave you guys. All right. So on that note, signing out.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.